Hi, folks. It's Pseudo, and with me is Mizpah.
Indeed, two voices, two hosts, but wait, there's more, because today is going to be a little bit of a special day.
Yes.
Um, why don't you tell all the people about the big surprise that, well, looking at the channel isn't that much of a surprise after all.
Oh, yes. We were very, very blessed to be able to sit down with Brad McQuaid and Salim Grant and discuss all things Pantheon Rise of the Fallen related. And yes, we did ask questions that you sent in, which always makes me excited. I like helping out the community. So, taking what you guys want to know and bringing it to the people who can actually answer the question. That's what we did today.
And that's much better than us just speculating, but the speculation will follow. We're kind of a little bit of an unusual show today. We're going to play this delightful interview. We've asked our usual bits and pieces. We'll see what you guys think of that. It's a touch longer than normal, but hey, good content is good content, and there was no reason to cut it short.
Yeah.
After the interview, we'll be taking questions, we'll be analysing it, putting our own thoughts into the mix. We may even come back with the usual weekly MMO news and various updates. You're also going to see, you can see half a person in my background. And later, after the show, you're going to find out who the half a person is. But for now, let's get straight into the main course. I am absolutely delighted to say MMO Buff back again on a Monday, talking to Brad McQuaid and Salim Grant about Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen.
Give me 1 second. I have to perform my usual magic. So, I have the ability to time travel. That's all I'm going to say.
And hello folks, it's another MMO Buff pre-record where my past self gets to talk to my future self, or in some strange way we all get confused and try not to cross the streams. However, there are some far more interesting people to talk to today than simply myself and Pseudo. We are joined by some very special guests from Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, currently on Kickstarter. It's Brad McQuaid and Salim Grant. Say hello folks.
Hi guys, it's Brad.
This is Salim.
And you're running around being very busy, and all of the excitement is in and around Pantheon. Perhaps we could kick off by you giving us the quick, 2-minute snapshot. Well, what's Pantheon all about?
I'll let Brad take that.
All right. Pantheon is kind of a bit of a hybrid. It's a modern MMO, but it also, a lot of it, the foundation of the game goes back to games that we worked on previously, like EverQuest 1. So the big thing that we're doing differently is instead of trying to make a game that tries to appeal to everybody, we are focusing on a target audience, that somebody that's players that are looking for group-based gameplay. They're looking for a little bit more of a challenge. Most of the world is open world. We're using instant sync here and there, but you'll have that open world feeling again. So it's kind of in one sense, it's going back to the MMOs, from the olden days, but at the same time, we're doing lots of new, exciting, more modern functionality as well.
So we should find ourselves with an interesting blend, because there are many gamers, and I put myself in this bracket, and I know Pseudo's in the same place, where we like to decry what's missing in games. And from time to time, maybe things are a little easier than we'd like, and we keep saying, hey, why doesn't someone do this? And if we go and look at the Kickstarter page for Pantheon and read your letter at the bottom, that seems to be pretty much where we're coming from. So before we go into some more detailed questions, one thing I find interesting is what really is what has shaped the vision for the game? Because there's a huge amount of history in game development, not just with yourself, Brad, and with yourself, Salim, but with the entire team that we can see that's actually being assembled. So what has actually shaped, what experiences have shaped the direction of the game? Perhaps from the obvious sources, but maybe from the less obvious sources as well.
Well, the obvious ones, of course, are the games that we worked on. EverQuest and Vanguard, EverQuest 2, lots of different games. We have a pretty veteran team, and if you take all the games we worked on, it's a pretty long list. So those have, of course, influenced us. And then, like you mentioned in my letter, I get emails all the time saying, "Hey, bring back some of the old game mechanics." And there's some people that don't like the direction that some MMOs are going. And they want a game made more for them. And I really think that's the future. That instead of having these, crazy large MMOs, I'd rather see 10 different smaller ones made for specific audiences. In any other type of entertainment, I can go see a drama or horror or science fiction, or if I go to the bookstore, you see different sections based on types of books and the different authors. And so why not MMOs? I understand earlier in their infancy, there were only a couple, but I think now's the time to start making smaller, more focused MMOs. And we're kind of trailblazing that. We're kind of one of the first ones to say, hey, that's what we're going to do. But definitely all sorts of games. I'm sure Salim can list games that influence him, from all over the place.
Yeah, I think Brad nailed it. If you think about, there's a lot of games that influence, whether it be an MMO or a single-player game. I look at experiences really and just think about, memorable play. EverQuest has a lot of them for me. Final Fantasy XI has a whole bunch of them for me. But I look at games, things more recent like Dark Souls and Demon Souls, things like that. Just the fact that those are examples of games where the selling point is challenging gameplay. You will die. You will lose hours of work. And while it's really one of the best modern day examples of a game that brought back the feeling of wanting to throw your controller at your TV, but at the same time, when you accomplish something, you are screaming to the heavens that you did that. And EverQuest, FF11, Vanguard to some point, that occurred, and we really want to bring that back. And that's really, I guess the key thing that drives outside of games is just pure passion from people like you, passion from us. We enjoy playing these games. I actually logged in Project 99 last night, me and my wife and some of the other designers on the team, and playing that Kunark level experience, I didn't miss a beat. I loved it. I absolutely loved every minute of it. I died. I made a gnome necro and I went to the mage guild because I normally play at a mage, and I got killed by the guild masters there, and I just laughed like, oh man, I got to get my corpse back, and I ran close again. I died. Oh man, I didn't have a map, so I'm sitting there discovering the city and trying to remember where things were, and yeah, seriously, it was just great for me as a guy who's played a lot of the modern day MMOs. It was definitely a great feeling. Some people are probably like, oh, what the heck? Like, that doesn't sound like fun. But really, any of us who have those type of memories, it is fun. And that feeling, that feeling of accomplishment, that feeling of gaining greatness, it is somewhat lost in today's stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely a trend, and this is one thing you may need to try and address as time goes on, I guess. There's a generation of gamers that are perhaps looking for that risk and reward experience. I can go back to earlier raiding days where some ridiculous things happened, and you still have the hairs on the back of the neck moment when you're actually successful, and nothing matters at that point. But then you're in some games where, well, you kind of sneeze, and, oh, I've got a fantastic reward. Aren't I clever? I sneezed. An awful lot is lost in that translation. But to the people that have only experienced a limited risk-reward action set, so to speak, how are we going to try and get these people to say, hey, this is really good, we should try it? No, it's not just banging your head against a wall. There's a point here. Because that's really got to be driven, is it not by gameplay? Or are there other ways that you're going to say to people, no, look, you may not have experienced this, but come give it a go. Come get hold of it.
I think that's a great question, because that's definitely, honestly, one of our challenges is, reaching out to the person who did play years ago. They know what we're talking about, but reaching out to the newer player who didn't grow up on, EverQuest and Ultima Online and Dark Age of Camelot, it's a bit more difficult. So, to answer that, we're stressing that we're not focusing on grinding and repetition. There's two ways to look at difficulty. There's the challenging part, which is a good kind of difficulty, and then there's the repetition, and then there's the fact that the older games often required 4, 6, 8 hours to play, for a play session, and those are things that we are changing. We're trying to make sure that we don't have that repetitive grinding. We're trying to make sure that you can get a good sense of accomplishment after playing 1 or 2 hours, things like that. But in reaching out to those people, we're also really encouraging the people who have already pledged, who are already very interested. We're asking them and asking you guys to, just word of mouth. Word of mouth is important. There was very little marketing with EverQuest early on, but it still spread very quickly, and that's because everyone was telling everybody else what an interesting and great game it was. So, we need that help from our existing fan base to spread the word.
Well, we'll certainly do what we can here, because from a vision perspective, I can very much personally say that I can buy into what's being put forward, and indeed have done.
Same.
But there are, again, a lot of ways I can take this, but I'm going to do something perhaps a little unusual here. We like to be a little bit more analytical, so let's go in that direction. And you've got some core tenets, which of course are up on the Kickstarter page and elsewhere, and that's the first thing that really piqued my interest. But I'm going to actually pose the why question back to you, although I have my own ideas. Why are these core tenets important? Because maybe that will help bridge the gap as to, what is this game all about? What is the experience all about for people? So if I fire that up, first of all, it's a classic take on MMO adventures. We're going to go and look at, what has been, do what's been done well, do it again, try and bring back what's missing. But there's a number of things you're saying there. So a heavy focus on character development, an immersive world, and cooperation. Well, not everyone's that used to cooperation, so why is, daft though it might seem, it's an MMO, massively multiplayer. But from your perspective, what is it about bringing back cooperation that's so important?
Well, I actually think it's the way a lot of people, maybe even most people, are wired. We're used to, we go to work, and we usually have a role, and then there are other people that have different roles, and we work together, and a company that's efficient has everyone working together to create a product. We play soccer, and we have defenders and midfield and forwards and a goalie, and so you have a role there, and you work together as a team, and you get you definitely get a sense of accomplishment out of that by playing your role, doing it well, and working with these other people that have different roles. So I think it's the same thing, whether it's working or a real life sport, or whether you're in a online world. People are wired to work inside of a role and to work with other people in a team. People enjoy that. Not everybody, but I think a lot of people do. And at least for me, when I do play my role well, and I'm with a team, a group, a guild that is, that have also played their roles well, that we work as a team, that I get a great sense of accomplishment when we triumph over something.
And to expand on Brad's point, the concept of cooperation isn't lost in today's MMOs. There's raids, there's groups, there's all that type of stuff, but I think that one key thing that is lost is what he said, roles. And right now you can drill down roles to 3 of them: DPS, healer, and tank. And while we will have those roles, the one thing that EverQuest had was you had utility classes, you had debuffers, you had those things, right? We will absolutely be bringing those things back, because it's very important to us. One of the core things about our combat, one of the things that I've seen in today's MMOs is, you have a stun, you have a snare, you have these things. Having a druid in your party in Sebulus when a frog was going to run away, it's important that a snare was there so they would stop, because that meant you potentially were about to die. And with our combat, one of the things we really wanted to focus on was bringing back the importance of those types of utility spells and just utility abilities, which, they bleed into your different roles. What is your role when we are in a dungeon when you are a druid? What is your role when we're not in the dungeon when you are a druid? You have multiple things that you can do. You're not a master of everything, but you are able to bring certain things to a group. And when those group dynamics change because there are more than just 3 roles, how you take on a challenge changes, which means your game experience in the same area is different. And that is a very important thing that I think has been lost for sure, because people are effectively 3 roles. DPS is king. You got tanks screaming and yelling, "I want to do more damage." Well, that's not the role that's defined there. And I think that the masses have kind of had developers go away from that. And like Brett said, we are not afraid to say we're going after that, and we understand it's going to be a smaller group of people, but that's the people that we want to play this game.
So that leads me on straight away to something interesting. In many places, roles become homogenized. Hey, I can do this, but hey, I can do it too. So, the sense of importance that I'll get really good at, crowd control and chain CC kind of goes away, because anyone can do it. Everyone's got their version of the ability. So 2 things. Are we going to see a situation where someone with a role has a responsibility, and if they get it wrong, you fail? The group fails, the raid fails, the person fails, whatever it might be. A sense of you actually have to be able to be so tall to ride this ride, so to speak, in terms of practice, competence, ability. And secondly, are we going to see a scenario whereby if you want to be the best at X, well, you've got to build this way. And you've got to make a choice. You've got to choose to be the best at X, which means you're actively choosing, say, to not do as much DPS to gain that capability. Are those reasonable statements?
They are indeed. I mean, the notion of the linchpin guy in a raid or whatever not doing, it's like fighting Dozakar and the bard doesn't land inclusion and sound, right? Oh, crap, now we can't land slow. If that doesn't get off, if that bard dies, then yeah, you're either, just kind of wrapping things up and getting ready for the next pull, or you're going to try again. You're going to try to recover from it. But yes, the notion of those type of linchpin things, especially in a raid environment, it goes back to roles. It makes that person spending the time practicing or getting the right gear on his own time or whatever. It makes that person. It lets them prove that they are that elite player or they're that good player. So yeah, absolutely, I would love to see linchpin type stuff be a part of our combat, and I expect that will happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen at every level. I'm thinking that I'm in a 6-man group and this guy screws up, and then we're all dead wherever we go. But yeah,
there's a time and a place.
Yes, absolutely. And as far as sacrificing A so that you can be good at B, once again, it all comes down to things like gear and what attribute is higher than this, whatever, how it influences this, that, and the other. That part of it will also exist. We will have things like A's and stuff like that that will allow the person to become better at stuff. I don't want to give a lot of details on it, but we don't want to invest in things like the best build is this. All right, we want people to be free and open and be able to kind of customize or build whatever feels cool to them, and then excel from there.
Okay, so with a bit of luck, we won't see a huge amount of sort of flavor of the month if everything pans out from a design perspective. How are you going to manage to resist what is normal these days, and that's the ongoing call of, hey, I'm not powerful enough, buff me. Hey, that person's too superior, nerf them. Hey, I want to do this too. And over time, is there the trade-off where you go, well, hang on, we need players in our game. This is what the players want. Now, I contend, and I believe there's a quote from you I've actually seen in the past, Brad, something along the lines of the difference between what players say they want and think they want and need, and what players actually need to keep a balanced, fun, entertaining game. Mm-hmm. Now, I could argue that a current trend is to give a lot of players what they want, and that the effect is perhaps more negative than positive. Would you agree or disagree to that statement?
Well, in general, I agree. But actually, I've been really happy to see, at least, I've been frequenting all the as many message boards and different sites and doing interviews. We've been doing that as much as possible to get the word out. And I've been pleasantly surprised at the sophistication of the players that are interested in our game. I've had them come to me and say, "Hey, Brad, we want a harsh death penalty, or we want to really have to work at this, and we want a challenge." And we were wrong before. We don't need it. We don't want everything. We want a group and have different roles. So I think, there's almost like 3 different eras with MMOs. When they first came out, nobody knew what they were doing, including us developers, right? The players, this was all new to the players, and it was pretty new to us. Then came kind of the middle era with WoW and other games, and it did turn kind of into a just give everybody everything. But now I really think we're at a time where people are starting to realize that it's that's not necessarily fun. It's not necessarily something they want to do long term. And one of the big things is it doesn't create situations that are memorable. And people really want out of a game. They want to be able to talk 6 months later, 3 years later. They want to hang out with their guildmates and go, "Hey, do you remember that and how we barely survived and how it was challenging?" So I've really been pleasantly surprised that the players are becoming much more sophisticated, and hopefully we are too.
And I would probably say that's the case from what I have observed and been talking to people. The people that are jumping up and down about Pantheon probably fall more into that bracket where they think a little bit more and explore a little bit more and have a good feeling about what they actually want. So if that sets off the community and it grows from there, that can only be a very good thing.
I just wanted to, I don't know if I can expand on it a little bit.
Please do.
Just to make sure that your direct question is answered. The notion of giving everybody everything. Our game, we're defining an identity of our game, and that does not fit in our identity. And, when it comes to designing this game and implementing anything, we will go back to what our identity is and make sure that it fits in that box. We are presenting you guys, this is what our game is, and we will, as just developers, we cannot bleed outside of that. I mean, unless there is some absolute reason we need to, or we reevaluate things and say, this just doesn't work. But when it comes to specifically what you said, that does not work. It goes completely against the notion of roles and stuff like that. So you should not expect those types of things to happen.
I'd say you can't get a fairer quote than that. Let's bounce around a little more then. You mentioned the scenario of, say, "Hey, I'm talking to my guildmates. Do you remember when this happened?" And we're lucky enough to be in that camp. We've had the same guild going for about 9 years now, and we still talk about stuff that's happened, back in the day. But in your tenants, you talk about a constantly evolving and changing world. And there's various games have made, good use of devices that create story. And things that basically have an impact. I mean, something like the Gates of Anchorage, for example, is a seminal moment in the life cycle of WoW. What sort of devices and things might we see that will create those stories, that will create those epic moments? Is there perhaps an idea you may care to share to illustrate that point?
I might have something. I'm not sure if Brad... okay.
I have to try if I'm doing my job properly here.
This is actually funny because we were having a discussion. Ben and I were having a discussion about this the other day, and I brought up to him that one of the things about travel that's always bugged me, about the notion of meaningful travel that's always bugged me, is while it's easy to say we're not going to let you travel from A to B instantly, no one ever actually define or works out why you're doing that to me. What am I going to get out of you forcing me to do that? And so we were talking about, hey, if on the way from A to B, if something could change, the environment could change. If a storm rolls through and these elementals spawn and some event happens, that time I went from A to B was different than the last time I went from A to B. So even if there's some way for me to get from A to B quickly, I'm going to be compelled not to do that because I'm curious what's happening on the way there. And so I think that kind of goes to the notion of the environment changing, things like that. Those are the types of things that I would like to see, because not only does it play into the fact that the world is kind of different or changing. It also compels the player, or it makes the statement of travel being meaningful or fun. It actually does that. I think one of the reasons why a lot of games teleport you or whatever is because, I mean, what am I going to do between A and B? What does forcing me to travel from there do, gameplay wise, except keep me away from my friends? Whereas if we're like, hey, we need to go to this dungeon, but wait, let's all get on our horses and let's see what happens on the way there. Let's see if this changed, if this can't move or whatever. Those are types of things I'd love to see in the game. It's definitely stuff that we're looking into and talking about. So, I mean, that kind of goes to what you were saying. Hopefully, trying to answer the question. Sorry.
So could there be a scenario whereby, on the odd random occasion, going to nasty area X, travel itself is innately dangerous? Oh
yeah, absolutely. Exploring our world, and it goes back to what Brad said about people saying a harsh death penalty or something like that. We want people to respect our environment, and it's one of the things that's in our Kickstarter video. We want you to respect your environment. Mm-hmm. We want you to feel danger. If something is higher level than you, we want you to want to challenge it. But if you're literally shaking in your boots because you're like, oh man, if this guy kills me, I don't know what I'm going to do. That is it. You are now respecting your environment. You have genuine fear. You have tension. You have these things that get dopamine flowing, and that is a memory. That is instantly a photograph in your mind. Yeah. Hey, I took on this Cyclops out of nowhere, and I defeated him. We were together. He came in, and we barely defeated him. We were out there camping, and the sweeper comes by, and we beat him. Oh my God! Like yesterday, that wouldn't have happened. Definitely, environment should be dangerous. It should be challenging. But hey, go explore. It's open, so go see what you can do.
Okay, so would you describe the vision that you have as being the spiritual successor to EQ, perhaps the spiritual successor to Vanguard, or something entirely separate?
The way I've kind of put it is really all three. I mean, a lot of our really foundational functionality comes, is we definitely look at EverQuest 1 for that feel. But certainly, we were able to do things in Vanguard that we weren't able to do in EQ1, and there's some really great system of the classes and things like that that we want to take into this game. But then we also, we're kind of careful in the messaging. We don't want to come across as, we're just rehashing the past, right? So we have a lot of pretty cool modern systems as well. Some aspects of our combat. Some of our ideas with climate and situational gear and just different things like that. Mobs telegraphing their attacks and going out into the world and finding not just items but valuable abilities and spells. So it's really a mixture of all three. Modern, the modernity, being modern, and then also respecting the past.
Okay, well, we're going to dive into some community stuff shortly because I've had a lot of people jumping up and down with their own questions to ask you. So Pseudo's now getting warmed up. But before we do that, one thing I picked up on when you talked about sort of adding to the experiences that you've had before, I think I read somewhere you said that you would have liked to have expanded on the Vanguard ship system a little further, something that I thought had huge potential. Is that something you could elaborate on? Do you have an idea of, where that sort of thing might go, or where this kind of building on these foundations might take us?
I do. I'll stress right up front that this would be a stretch goal or something that we would add as an expansion. This is not something that we're going to ship with. We're being very careful.
This is not a gimme, folks. It's not automatically there. Let's be very clear.
Scope control.
Well, this isn't our first time making a game like this, and we know that we need to be careful with feature creep, and we need to define, like Salim was saying earlier, what does it fit in this box? But our long-term vision for ships, and we never quite realized it in Vanguard, we ran out of time, and you guys all know what happened there, is that you would actually own ships and use those to travel from one area to another overseas. Your ship would have hit points just like you have hit points, it could take damage. A kraken might attack your ship, or pirates might board your ship and try to sink it. And then you, as a craftsman, you would have to repair your ship to keep moving. So, kind of the extension of what we call the character model, where not you have hit points and abilities. So does your mount, and so does your ship. It's kind of as a logical extension there, but again, that's very long term. But that is part of the vision.
Okay, that's certainly, again, something that I could quite like the sound of. So hopefully, if enough people get behind it, we'll start to see those sorts of things at some point in the future.
Oh, it'll happen. I'm determined. There's some things that I really want to see that we've never had the time to fully realize or implement, and one way or another, we're going to get there.
Okay, let's touch on endgame. Endgame is an interesting concept to some people. To some people, you race through an MMO to get to this thing called endgame, where thereupon you do endgame forevermore, and that's what you do. And I am very much a core raider. There are other people who it's the story, the world, the environment, the journey. There's a move afoot in some games to really stop splitting the difference between the two. First of all, is endgame to you just an extension of the leveling process? Is playing the game full stop? Or will there be different sort of player types and goals for people at endgame?
That's a great question. How we're looking at that, and it's certainly something we need to get into our prototype and test it out. But in general, the answer is that we're looking. I say there's vertical content and horizontal content. And what we've seen mostly in MMOs is vertical, where you have maybe 50 or 75 or even 100 levels. We're going to trend more towards horizontal content, where there are fewer levels, but there's more content per level. And so really racing to the top, the top isn't really that far up there. It's more, how are you equipped? How well do you know the game? And you'll be able to group, because there's fewer levels, you'll be able to group with more and more people. There won't be that disparity of, if I'm level 25, I'm useless to a level 50 player. You will be able to play more of a role there. So, and the other thing you get there too is, I think it's kind of a travesty when players do power level just to get to that end game and miss all the content. There may be a great dungeon or some outdoor adventure area, and they never even see it because they just rip through the content. So, again, by having the content more horizontal, we can make sure that all the cool dungeons and cities and outdoor areas that we make are enjoyed by all the players, because it really doesn't make sense, and you really can't power level through that because of the horizontal content.
Go ahead.
Please,
To add to that, since you are a creator, the notion of that end game or top of the game, however we would describe it, the notion of like the competition, racing to the mob, be the first server to get this kill. Those types of things also define the older school game, the open world. So we'll definitely invest in those types of things too. We expect that type of healthy competition, because that's another aspect of social environment, right?
That gives me another interesting one to feed off for a moment. I actually do like both open world and instancing. I think both have their place, both have benefits. What are we going to see more of? I might be inclined to suggest it's possibly open world, looking at the heritage of the various titles. But if that is the case, how are you going to introduce the degree of complexity in terms of fight mechanics that perhaps is only possible in an instanced environment where you don't have those outside influences?
You're saying fight complexity as far as like encounters and stuff? Of who you're fighting.
Particularly complex multi-phase boss encounters, for example, things that would be difficult, if not impossible, to execute if you had external factors such as people in the group that weren't part of your organized guild, say.
In Vanguard, we pulled that off just fine. We definitely had to have some mechanics. Since the world, was open world, it had some mechanics where, mob was the raid encounter was locked to that group, that therefore it let us in the world do multi-phase things. As much of that as we cannot do would be great, just so it doesn't feel like a kind of a false instance within the real world. But it's definitely going to take some time. We have to stop and think and see what we can do, what makes sense. But definitely look to. It's not going to stop us. It's a challenge, but it's not going to stop us from doing that type of stuff, because that's awesome. Like, why? And I don't want to lock that away in an instance. I want people to be able to point and say, "Oh my God, they're fighting this great dragon, over the hill. Let's go. Oh man, he just did this crazy thing. Oh man, he disappeared in the smoke, and now he's split into two, and he's fighting half the raid, or he's gone over here." I want people to be able to see those things. An instance for as far as game, instance to versus open world balance. The desire is that instancing is used as little as possible. We've said that, in the case where we really want to tell kind of this linear story and make sure that the point is gotten across well. I think that is fine. As far as instancing, separating communities, we can definitely take strides to help prevent that. But in general, we would only really use it, or we would endeavor to only use it in case where we really just feel like, this is best told, to these 6 people or however many, in a very controlled environment that lets us make sure the story's gotten across, that this event works out pretty well. To answer your question, it really the first thing always will be open world, and if we can't get it to work well, then we'll investigate whether an instance is a good idea or not.
And just to stress too what Salim just said, we were able to make it work with Vanguard, and so I don't think that maybe other people have struggled with that. I don't know, but I don't think that you have to go to instancing in order to retain the type of advanced gameplay you're talking about. There are other approaches.
Final one then, and perhaps a little about the current process. We've seen a good evolution, personally, on the Kickstarter page in terms of the changes, talking to the community. A great level of interaction there has actually been good to see. How have you found, and how are you finding the Kickstarter process itself?
It's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. Really, I'm on the computer, 12, 14 hours a day. Ben's on there. I don't know if he even sleeps at all. But at least this is for me speaking personally. It's been a while since I've really been able to interact with the community. Mm-hmm. And like I was saying earlier, a lot of that community is more sophisticated now, and I'm having a great time just going out there, finding, listening to different people and trying to answer their questions, and getting some really great ideas from the players as well, in ways of improving our Kickstarter, or things they want to see in the game that they that they really enjoyed in the past. So we're out there, we're on the message boards, we're updating our Kickstarter page quite often. We're adding updates daily. We're getting some neat lore out there, all sorts of stuff, and the players seem to really be eating it up. And I'm just having it's a bit tight. I don't have a problem going to sleep at night. I'm tired, but it was. But I also go to sleep. I also go to sleep happy. Like, I've had a great day interacting with all these people.
Mm. Good to know. Well, I could talk for about another 3 hours exploring the gameplay, and there are limits on time. And soon I'm going to get told off. So, Pseudo handles all of our community stuff on MMOBuff, and we've had a great reaction from people. Oh, yes. And indeed from some of the fan sites that Pseudo will mention. So, time to bombard you with questions from other people, folks. I believe we've got about 20 minutes or so. Mm-hmm. Pseudo, over to you.
Before I go into the actual community questions, I want to state, as a person who really relishes community, I mean, I get really angry at games that don't put a lot of focus on the grouping or the community. It's interesting to me to see the concept that you guys have, especially with what you were talking about, Salim, about the travel, where the experience that you actually have of, say, running across something on that travel from X to Z, it sticks in your brain, because it seems to me that what you're trying to ensure by respecting the environment is that you will want to run around in a group. So you're encouraging group play beyond just simply you're going to get bonus XP. So as someone who really relishes community, that is right up my alley. So thank you.
I'm glad to hear it. Awesome.
Great.
You're welcome.
We get a lot of feedback saying the same thing, and we certainly personally feel the same way. So it's very validating to hear that. Thank you.
Hey, I'm thanking you guys. So going specifically along the lines of group content, Riva from a guild called Revenant Gaming is really interested to know about any of the options or features that Pantheon will actually be offering guilds. So, you run around with a giant group of people, you're taking down Frost Giant Balthazar, who decided to come visit the planet that day. That's great. So are there going to be anything special for people who decide to group together forever under a tag, so to speak?
Specific, different guild mechanics, I can't speak to right now because we don't have a lot of details about that. But we are talking about doing basically, just to put it simply, a group leveling system where if you and I are in a group for 3 or 4 hours, being in that group, we get some sort of passive benefit because our group effectively leveled up. This isn't like a permanent level or anything. It's basically for that session of gameplay. And groups can level up to a cap, and however that works, it could be passive benefits to abilities. It could be maybe it's just you get up to group level 5. Maybe it's the way that this particular item will drop, or maybe you'll discover a treasure. I mean, this is all just potential things. But when we first got together, when we started talking about grouping and social, this is one of those things that kind of sticks in my mind. There is a game that did this before, Anarchy Online. It was very subtle, but it was this it's one of those memory things with me. It's one of those things that I'd be like, man, I had no idea what it did, but when I was in the group and I saw, level 2, level 3, man, this is cool. Like it just, the concept itself was really cool because, at the time, at least not that I was aware of, no one was doing anything like that. So, I mean, imagine being in a group, and we group all the time. I mean, it could go beyond that. It could be also a thing where, we group a lot, and because we group a lot, we start to unlock different things because we are friends, because we group together. It's all, to make an analogy of it, imagine superhero teams working together. They work together so much that they just know how each other thinks, or something like that. Imagine grouping with people or being with your guild for such a long time that at certain points, hey, we just have this extra thing that we can do together because we know each other so well. This is all very high level, and I see you're getting excited, so I want to preface it, or I guess suffix now, but that's the type of stuff that I really want to look at, and it's another thing that I don't want to just say that we're a group focused game, because that effectively just translates into we can get in a group and fight stuff that requires a group. I want to go beyond that and say, here's a benefit for grouping. Other things that we're doing, when you're in a group, you're together, we're experimenting with the notion of not splitting up the XP or whatever you're using to gain advancement, because we want people to group. I mean, there should just be a reward and a benefit to grouping outside of, hey, we can just go take on these things. We really want people to feel rewarded for grouping, and if we can reward them for being grouped together for a long time or grouping with people that they're familiar with, then that's just awesome.
There will also be a lot of game mechanics that help people get together in groups. We think that's very important. The Brotherhood system worked really well in Vanguard with offline travel, where you could be part of a group and log off, and when you log in the next day, you're where the group is. You're not where you logged off. So
I made frequent use of that facility.
Of course you did. You're notorious for getting lost, Miz.
And bringing people. If you suddenly need someone has to leave and you're in the depths of a dungeon, making sure that you can bring somebody else down to you so you can keep playing, things like that. So, grouping is so important to us that we're coming up with system upon system to really accommodate that.
Now that is exciting. Like I said, to me, if you ask me what the reward is for grouping, I'm grouping. I'm that kind of a person. I like the community. So it appeals to me. Now we have Tom from Project Pantheon, who is curious about all of the UI offerings that you could possibly think of. Now, you guys are still going through your development phase. You're not going to be able to sit there and go, we know X, Y, and Z is going to exist, and we know the map is going to do this, and we know that you're going to have a compass or what have you. But they're kind of interested to see what your goal and your direction is about the UI. I mean, will there be integrated maps? Will there be customization? Can you turn things on and off? I mean, have you put any thought into that?
At this point, we can confirm that there's a mouse-driven UI.
Yes, you can.
No controller support.
We can quote you on the mouse-driven UI. Yes.
I'll let Salim elaborate.
I'll elaborate on mouse-driven UI. Yes. So really, our philosophy is kind of a minimalistic approach as much as possible in UI. We don't want you playing the UI. We don't want you having to stare at the UI. Obviously, we will use the UI to give you certain cues or whatever, but really, once you play in a game, we want you to be involved in the game. If you talk about immersion, whether it's third or first person, you want to be immersed in the game, what you're doing, and not having to look up at this mini map over here to see what's coming in, or checking whatever button you have to click over here. So we're trying to be as minimalist as possible. Obviously, as systems come in and stuff like that, we have to consider things like UI elements where appropriate. As far as maps go, yeah, I think this is still like a bigger discussion for us because we could easily go the EQ route, the original EQ route, where there's literally no map. Like I said, I had fun trying to find my way around Ekanon last night. But because of contemporary changes, there is plenty of decent argument made for the notion of being able to make your own maps. It's another thing that Ben and I were talking about the other night, where how cool would it be if you as a player could go out and be a cartographer? There's a cartography skill. You go out and you can map areas, and then you know what? You can sell your maps. One of the cool things about Final Fantasy XI, how they handled maps, is that you could buy maps, you can get maps as quest rewards, you could find maps. When you looked at those maps, they didn't tell you the whole story. They didn't tell you. They just gave you here's what this floor looks like. Maybe there's a hole burned in the map, which was also another cool feature. But when you went here's the path I can. Oh wait, there's a cave in here. So it didn't tell the whole story, but you had a general idea of it, and it didn't take away at all from the experience. And I think on top of just the fact that they weren't given to me, that I could either purchase them or whatever, I had to find these maps in some way, was great. If you take that to another level, where the guy you're buying the map from is a guy who actually went out and he mapped it, like he went to certain points, he scribbled in this little thing, and his cartography skill was high enough for however it ends up, it would work out. I think that type of stuff would be exciting, and it would be an acceptable way to put maps in the game. Because really, you think about fantasy, you think about great adventurers. You really think they weren't writing maps? You didn't think that they weren't navigators on the sea, were they not making maps so they knew where they were going? To just not have a map or the ability to make a map, I think is really archaic. But I understand the idea behind it, but I think it's archaic in a sense that it's a role-playing game. The individual should be able to somehow create something, and if we can make that an immersive experience, then I think it just adds to everything.
I have to say I like the concept, but now I'm waiting for someone to deliberately create a misleading map and then
Oh, sure.
Oh, why not? That would be brilliant. You know, the higher your skill
This
goes,
way-
the more you can hide things. No, the Frost Giant isn't here. Cthulhu's here. I promise.
No
It's kind of
treasure.
like Dark Souls and people leaving messages saying, "Oh, this way is safe," and you go around a corner and there's a big poison trap. Yeah.
That's all part of our remote briefing system.
You heard it first. Okay. Well, another question. This one specifically for you, Salim. This comes from somebody named Eridun Mithara, who's interested in knowing how many times a week you wear your Atari t-shirt.
Wait, huh? What?
Just a random community question that came in.
I have no idea. I just grab T-shirts. I really like Atari. I don't know. I think I actually have probably been filmed or shown in that shirt a lot. I have no idea why. I just grab. I have a bunch of T-shirts, but when things get washed, they just end up going on top of that. I don't know. I'm probably explaining this way too long. Sorry.
For people that want to know
getting
what
trolled,
we're
but,
talking at or about, I suggest going and checking out the PJ Pantheon forum. You may find something interesting in there.
Yes, absolutely hysterical. And I repeat, Eridun Mithara.
I know.
Well, that's more for the audience than anything else.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Gomo from PJ Pantheon is very, very interested in discovering why there's not going to be playable bunnies at launch. However, I think it's probably better to not focus so much on the playable bunnies, but focus more on the important question that he and Daniel Congrave share about the customization of the character. This goes from, do I get to pick what color my eyelashes are, to the finest detail, to skill trees? I mean, how much customization do you want to give to players for their characters? Will it take me 5 minutes to build a character, or will it take me a week of planning because I want to have a mole right over my forehead, or right there on my forehead?
Well, I mean, if you want to play a game, I mean, even modern day game, if you want to play a game and get in quick, you can customize your character pretty quick. But character customization, how detailed it will be, is certainly something that we are not even near able to discuss right now, because we're still researching, how our models are going to work and what we could possibly do.
Right.
I think I'd stress the point. I mean, the intent is with our character technology, which, as Salim said, it is not there yet, to be comparable to other MMOs. People enjoy customizing their character and how they look. Some people, I'll usually go through it pretty quick. My 15-year-old daughter will sit there and mess with her characters for an hour. So we want that to all be possible. But there is one thing a little bit different that we are doing in the game, and that is after you've created your character and you're actually in the world, the way you look is based on what you're actually wearing. We don't really foresee a lot of dyeing or things, different colors or whatever. There may be decorative or cosmetic items you can wear, but generally we want, if some high level, Crusader comes walking through the town with all his amazing armor and his crazy two-handed sword, we want people to turn around and go, wow, I've never seen that before. Where did this guy come from? That's amazing. Well, one of these days I want to get that plate mail that he's wearing. And that's something we think maybe has been kind of lost too, where people just run around looking however they want to look like, and we want it to reflect your accomplishments.
I think that's a great one, because, I was there once upon a time walking around in an MMO going, what's going on? Hey, what's that guy wearing? That's fantastic. And then these days, it's all too often, if I click here, I can get a different coloured version. So to have... Will we therefore start to see a real separation between, if you really want the highest end visual rewards, you're going to have to do the highest end content.
Exactly.
That is absolutely the goal.
True?
That is absolutely the goal.
Yeah, you summed it perfectly.
That pretty much makes Mizpah an incredibly happy,
That makes me very
man.
happy.
Yes. Now, Nate Long is curious because of one of his favorite things from EQ being GM events. If you guys look to have that kind of community involvement in Pantheon in the future.
It would be high. I think it'd be higher on both our lists. I mean, it's, we obviously would have to have GMs, and I think that not only from the GM side, but the player side, that is a great thing. I enjoyed doing them. And ultimately, when you get down to it, we're all here to have fun. So, I don't see any reason we would not.
Well, I actually think we have kind of an advantage there because we're a smaller team making a more focused game. And so the number of developers and potentially GMs versus the number of players, that ratio is going to be better because, and I'm looking forward to that because I want to be able to jump in the game and interact with the players, and kind of like how it was early in the in EverQuest 1 beta where you kind of after a while started recognizing people here and there, and it started becoming a greater community, not just people you group with or in your guild, but you start recognizing just the inhabitants of the server that you're on. So we, as Salim said, it's important to us. We have a lot of fun with that, and I think given the fact that we're a smaller company with a smaller targeted game, that we'll be able to do more of that than you've seen in the past.
You mentioned a couple of times the idea of this smaller core demographic and the game being built out to support that. Do you have, and obviously in the vaguest sense possible, a sense of scale as to the sort of community needed to support that vision?
Not yet. You mean scale of the world, or you mean number of players?
Scale in terms of the player base, I suppose. How many accounts need to actually exist for this to be feasible? I mean, I'm sure it's something that possibly something you're not going to share, but something that has been modelled.
I'm not. Yeah, I can't open the business plan for right now for you, but I can say, but I really can say this, and that is, as a smaller company, a reasonable number of players can bring in a lot of revenue. If you're a large company, a Sony, a Microsoft, an EA, that smaller number may not be acceptable. That may not be bringing in enough revenue because of all the different projects that are going on and all the overhead associated with a larger company. By being a more focused company, we can be profitable with less players. I'll leave it at that.
Which is a very, very, very realistic thing, especially when you start to go targeted. Jim Bellini from PJ Pantheon is interested in hearing from you both what the experience difference is between, say, doing EQ or Vanguard and Kickstarter, because you have two completely different models. I mean, you're talking about being small and very focused. Is there sort of a different feel to the atmosphere? Is it more challenging, more exciting? Do you feel less pressure? Do you feel overwhelmed? I mean, what are the differences, and are you enjoying yourselves? Because it sounds like you are.
No, we definitely are. Like I was talking about earlier, we're really busy. We're jumping all over the place. We are learning every day how to communicate better to the players as it relates to the Kickstarter site. We're MMO developers first, and the Kickstarter stuff is something that while we studied it and looked at a lot of other sites before we launched ours, there still was a lot to learn. So, but I like learning stuff, and like I mentioned earlier, I love interacting with the community. Flames and trolls stopped bothering me 15 years ago, so that's not an issue.
Plus one to immunity.
Yeah, I've acclimatized myself. I've acclimatized myself to that climate, and I've got a lot of resist gear there. So, how about you, Salim?
Experience is definitely a lot more fun with a team of people who I know they're 1 degree removed from me. So it's great being able to work with these guys. And it kind of goes back to that group thing where I know how a lot of these guys think. They know how I think, so we play off each other really well. doing stuff like class designs and just talking about these other things. It's fun. We can sit down, we can talk over a cup of coffee, and after that we've come out with this really cool idea that we're all really excited about. So it's been great. I mean, when it comes to Vanguard, or EverQuest, when I got there, the teams already were decent size. I didn't know a whole lot of people, and running up and down stairs and trying to interact on those levels. It certainly was not as personable. I still had a blast, but this is definitely more fun, especially on the creative level. I'm a really collaborative guy, and I love the fact that I can just call, or heck, a chunk of the design team and our artists I'm in Skype with all day, literally just in voice. We're just talking about random stuff, and someone will say, "Hey, what if we did this?" "Oh, yeah," and then it'll turn into a design session. So that's really, really funny, and I just couldn't do that at working on EverQuest or Vanguard because it's just a lot of people. So
larger teams.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Go ahead, Miz. I know you've got another question.
Let's drop another one into the mix then, shall we? There's many things being talked about with regards to combat, different styles of combat. We've seen an evolution as time has gone on from some quite static clicking or key binding to some much more dynamic combat. There's a little more Twitch focused. Where are we at with combat for yourselves? What's the plan? Is there any details out there you can share?
So our take on combat is familiar, and I guess maybe out there some people might think kind of crazy, but so obviously the core is to kind of bring back slower pace. Like that's one of the key things, is slowing things down a little bit, and that goes back to games I mentioned before, like EverQuest, Final Fantasy 11, where you stop, you're watching combat, you're once again playing a game, and you react to what's going on. So you think about the Froglock about to cast Ice Comet, especially after Froglock's Ice Comet skills were updated. You need to stun him. The Froglock who's running away. You need to be able to snare him. In today's day and age, it seems like I get a new ability that has stun. Well, I have a damage rotation. I'm just going to add that into my damage rotation. I'm not going to leave that off to the side to save it for later. What we've done with combat is we've taken the concept of the spell slot system from EverQuest and applied that to everybody. So when you go into combat, you have to basically load up sets of abilities, and that's what you're limited to. And these abilities could have limited charges, or be mana based. There's a variety of different ways they could be used. But when you're in combat, the limited ability set means that you only want to use the situational abilities when they're situational, and obviously your damage abilities when they come up, things like that. That's really one of our focuses. Is preparation is big. As a caster in EverQuest, drop down different spells, being in combat, and say, "Oh man, I only got 8 slots. Oh, okay, let me cast this debuff real quick. Oh, I got to sit down. I got to mimic spell, and I got to stand up before I get hit and get 100% crit chance." We want to kind of bring that kind of intense feel back, because even though the combat was slow, doing that was insane. Especially when you're talking about raid or something where AEs are going off, so you have the time and stuff. Now, the ability sets themselves. There's a lot of detail into that. I could probably talk for a couple hours about it, but I'll save that for a later update. But one of the big things on top of that is, Pantheon is focused on this lore about fallen heroes, and our abilities are effectively these abilities from these heroes. So as you go through the world, and Brad mentioned earlier that one of the things that you'll be getting outside of normal loot is abilities. As you go through the world, you'll be able to collect things like base, ability templates. These templates have certain themes. This ability template can have 3 greens and 2 blues, and abilities have color affinity associated with them that determine their type of power, their influence, things like that. So you'll collect templates. Those templates can grow in level, and as they grow in level and reach certain tiers, they will gain certain powers as well. But also you can collect the abilities. The abilities are hero oriented. And on top of that, so let's say, you find Aradune's ability template, or whatever you want to call it. That template, while it can take any ability of whatever color, you could find Aradune's other abilities, and when you get them all together, you've basically formed a hero essence. And that means that you've got the essence of Aradune. So when you level that up, eventually, I'm not saying for all heroes, but eventually, you may be able to take on the look of Aradune when you equip that template, which means you use his ability. You're effectively channeling Aradune. That's where I say people are going to think we're going crazy because there's some art requirements and stuff there, but that is kind of the core of it. We're sticking with the preparation. We're kind of going back, investing in that spell slot and limitation and the preparation side of things, which feeds into things like downtime and having to stop and prepare depending on what challenges you're facing in a dungeon. But on top of that, just think about the fact that you are empowering yourself from the world. The notion that these planes have collided, and there's all this power, this magic, this energy sitting there. You can manipulate it. It's fine that you can manipulate it, but imagine just effectively killing something, then looting its body and pulling off its ability that it was using, or finding something in the ground next to it. So you've basically taken this chunk of mana or this chunk of power, and it turns into this essence or this ability, and then you can fill that in, or you've just got the core ability. So that's the crux of it. We have we're also experimenting with a lot of things like spell transformation. We actually have an ability right now where the necromancer is casting a death bolt. It starts flying towards its target. The sorcerer drops this thing that I call a pillar of power in front of her, and it's basically a vortex. So any projectile that gets near it, it sucks it in and it emits it on the other side as a heal. So strategically, you want to take that ability and place it in front of obviously your target, your casters, or the casters you're facing, and make sure that everyone's standing on the other side of that. So it kind of plays into things like facing and stuff like that. Brings back those types of strategies. So yeah, it is going to be exciting, and when we sit down and think about the nitty gritty of it, it feels very real. It feels very possible. Obviously, this is a high level. But like I said, it's right now it's the most fleshed out part of the game, and it's really exciting to think about it.
And the reason is just really quick. The focus of the game is exploration, adventure, and combat. And if we don't make all of that a lot of fun and detailed and something that you learn and get better at and take pride in, if we don't have that foundation, then all the other nifty ideas really don't matter.
Yep.
And I see so many hooks there into other aspects of the game that have been talked about. We've got the horizontal leveling. You've got to go out and get the spells, get the abilities, get the templates. I would guess you're increasing your utility way beyond the level. You're hooking into the lore, the planar fantasy, where everything comes together. So,
and that needing the community to ensure
in that explanation.
But one thing I definitely want to point out is that I don't want people to make an assumption. Oh, I can collect all these abilities. That means I can just do whatever I want. No. That is absolutely not how it works. If you are a crusader, the types of essences that you can use are crusader type essences. Those are the types of heroes that you resonate with. Bleeding out into some non-role specific things may happen, but this is who you chose. This is what you are. This is the role that you have invested in, and within that role, you're going to be able to do a lot of cool things and just mix and match. I mean, it's serious as, just imagine just having this deck of cards, deck of magic cards, and Brad kind of uses this as kind of the basis for where this came from. Deck of magic cards, all these crazy things that you could do. Like, what deck do I want to build today? You can think of templates as that. They are decks that this is your hand. When you go into combat, this is your hand. Here's a card I'm playing. I'm going to tap my mana, and there you go. So it's hopefully execution is as exciting as the thought. Always theory is not always exactly as you think it's going to be in execution, but I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be awesome.
I'm already speculating on mapping out ability sets across an entire raid now to achieve things. So that's...
especially with the realization that you guys were saying of going beyond just the simple Holy Trinity. You guys are bringing back the controllers, really.
Yep.
And that is just adding a whole nother dynamicism where it's not a matter of how much DPS did I get in this boss fight. It's how many things did I control and how long were they controlled by me. That is really exciting to me as a player. So well, we may have to completely redo one of our shows, Mizpah, and take away the Holy Trinity and bring in the Holy Quattro?
Quadrilogy.
The quadrility.
Whatever the phrase is, yes.
If you think about EverQuest, there really weren't. Mm-hmm. There was no archetype in EverQuest. You just played hybrids, did cool stuff, and healers did cool stuff. I mean, Shaman, which is the EverQuest Shaman, is one of the best classes made. Period. In any MMO, right? And it has not been reproduced. It's just it drives my wife crazy, right? But that class just doesn't exist anywhere else. And why doesn't it exist anywhere else? The EverQuest Mage, I mean, there's been copies of it, but the EverQuest Mage, you can't find that experience anywhere else. And it drives me crazy because, man, so many hours playing my Mage, and I love that class.
Which is another reason we're making this game to calm Salim down.
So you've got a game to play.
I'm sorry, sometimes my passion takes control of my mouth and I just start talking. So forgive me for going long. I'm sorry.
We need to keep that craziness in check to some degree.
That's where you come in, right?
It's
I know for me, when I get passionate, I am exactly the same way.
Well, I'll be like, hey, if we don't have this feature, my head's going to explode. Okay.
I'm not like that. But
but if there weren't core passion driving this, I don't think I believe it would succeed.
Oh yeah, of course.
I think that has to be there.
Yeah. That is one of our number one things.
Sometimes.
Number one rules.
Yep. Well,
that's
the passion.
That's a glimpse into it.
And this is the game that we want to play too. I want to play this game. Yep. It's not like there's some like I'm a game developer and some entity saying we need a golf game or something. Okay, I'll make one. This is it. This is what we have been wanting to play for a long time. And like Salim said, a lot of those experiences have been missing for a long time, and we're going to bring them back.
Yep. Yes.
I'm looking forward to 2017. There's a reason we started something called MMOBuff.TV.
Just a little passionate about, just a little.
Indeed.
And a little analytical. Okay, a little passion, a lot of analysis.
Hopefully.
Actually, I hope we balance it just right, because that's what we're
no worries.
We'll find out.
No worries.
Gents, do you have any plans going forwards, by the way, for presence at the various events, from the Gamescoms to the PAXs, things of that ilk going forwards? Or are we just far too far out from 2017 to think about that sort of thing?
Yeah, it'll happen. Not this year. That would be something probably after we've got a lot more to talk about. We're in beta, so year 2 and year 3, I would think you'd see a lot more of that.
And I shall look forward to those events as well.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
Perhaps I could ask you to leave us with your closing thoughts. What's the message you want to leave the community? But I have a pseudo jumping in.
Yes. One thing I definitely want to make certain that you guys throw in there before you say leave us with your parting words of wisdom. How can people get involved? We know you've got your Kickstarter, but now's your time. Give us all the links, all of them.
There's certainly the way that that we've been asking people for help, and that is reaching out to old guildmates and people who maybe played these games a long time ago, but now they don't. They've, they're older and they have jobs and spouses, and they just don't follow YouTube. They don't follow websites. Maybe they don't even know what Kickstarter is. But if they heard that there was a game like this coming back, maybe they'd be interested. So if people could reach out to guys they used to game with years ago, if you still have that contact information, word of mouth there's a lot, as we learn, there's a lot of different components that make up a successful Kickstarter campaign, and one of the really big ones is quite simply word of mouth. And so that's where we would kind of reach out and say,
Yeah.
help
We
us
need
out.
people to ring the bells and bang the drums. I mean, send the call out, gather your warriors, let's get it all together.
And psychologically speaking too, they've done studies, and I mean, if your friend says go check something out, that's like 100 times more powerful than if you see an ad somewhere saying go check this out. And,
I mean, people have already done a lot of great stuff. So I mean,
absolutely,
we don't want to ask people to do a whole lot more. But yeah, I mean,
But by the same token,
it's been great. It's been great so far. I mean, really,
and as for
excited.
kind of a concluding statement or whatever, kind of touching on what Salim just said, it's, we knew there was an audience out there for this. We didn't know how big, and it's bigger than we had thought. And like I said earlier in the interview, the people are more sophisticated than we would have thought in many ways. It's just been great. And so just a huge thank you to everyone. People have gone through and made, page after page of suggestions. I asked people, I told people, I want to reach out to the old different EQ1 guilds, and before I knew it, I had an email with the links to every Facebook page, to every EverQuest guild. People, PJ Pantheon, those guys rapidly putting up a site. The nicer guys on Reroll. Thanks. Just want to say thanks to everybody. We're not done yet, but everything's looking great. We're having fun, and just thank you very much.
If I am strict with the clock, I'm guessing we're probably running to the end of our pleasant chat. I could keep going.
I could too. We can get into it.
Well, then let's do this. Then let's do this again soon. Then
We can, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We'd love to. Maybe at some point we can chance arms and try and get on a live show.
Oh, that would be lovely. Yes.
See what happens.
Absolutely.
But
I can wear my Adidas shirt. Or Atari shirt.
Your Atari?
Sorry. Yeah. Wear my Atari shirt.
we'll hold you to
probably
that one.
wearing it right now.
I am not wearing my Atari shirt right now.
I now really want to, just make certain that any pictures we see of you in the future are just pure Atari.
I think I will do that from now on.
Atari, brought to you by Salim.
There could be a bit of a branding copyright issue there, I suspect. But
IP problems, just a small amount. Yes.
then, Salim, Brad, thank you ever so much for your time.
Yes.
I'm sure we can't keep you anymore. Thank you again. Been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely been fun. Thanks for giving us the spotlight.
Look forward to next time. Thanks, gents.
All right.
And we're back live. Hello, everybody. It's Pseudo. I'm here with Mizpah, and I have to first off say a huge thank you to Brad and Salim for joining us to discuss all things Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. I am incredibly excited by the things that I'm hearing. As Mizpah knows, I am all about the group. I'm all about the community. For all of you who have been around, yes, we have been very blessed by having Brad join us in the chat. Shamefully, poor Salim couldn't join us. Apparently he's really busy, to be expected. And apparently we're not too certain what shirt he's wearing today because apparently he feels a little odd whenever Brad asks to video conference. So there you go. Now, we are going to dissect a little bit and a little bit of a post-analysis on the interview because a lot of stuff was discussed there. For those of you who joined late, or some people were saying that there were Twitch problems here and there, you will be able to watch the entire interview. It will be up tonight on www.youtube.com/MMOBuff.
And we may even try and break it up into a couple of bits. Whether time will let us do that or not, but we'll try and make it as easy to access as possible for people.
Oh, absolutely. A big, big, big thanks also goes out to everybody who took the time to send in questions. I like taking questions to developers, especially from the community, because we as press, we can sit there and we can ask all the questions in the world, but if we're not asking the questions you want answered,
then there's not a lot of point, really, is there?
No.
Thanks to, a lot of people came into the channel, stayed in the channel. Thank you very much for that. Hopefully, you enjoyed. The question is now, of course, where do we go from here? So I have a couple of things that we talked about offline that I think we're going to bounce into. But I'd be keen really to interact with the channel here and see what people want us to elaborate on.
Well, the first thing that needs to be elaborated on is, Mizpah, I need to warn you. You are currently being flanked. This needs to be taken care of.
I am currently being whatted?
Flanked.
Ah, oh dear. Who's flanking me? Oh, that one.
Who's flanking me? Seriously?
So, a little aside for those who follow MMOBuff on a regular basis, we have the website, we have various bits and pieces, and that requires sort of graphics, these overlays and lots of things that we see on a regular basis. And the chap behind me is someone some of you may know as Shinogi, a voice and a face that doesn't normally make it to the podcast. He sits in the background industriously doing what needs to be done to, well, try and improve how we look, which is quite a difficult job. He has much work to do.
This is not my real face. This is post-processing. Just letting you know.
Yep.
This is not what I look like.
I'm going to take 2 seconds to make a Shinogi come over here against his will and say hello.
Excellent.
And then I'll let him go and hide back on the sofa once more. So,
and then
Shinogi,
I will grill you on things that we have discussed offline.
Indeed. There we go. This is the face and the voice of one of our fantastic art guys who slaves away.
Understatement on fantastic.
And, well, website, graphics, along with Kasabian. There's a pair of you doing tons of stuff.
Kasabian is doing most of the overlays for the episodes, and he's done most of the logo stuff.
Closer to the mic there, Shinogi.
Responsible for most of the... I'm responsible for most of the website, and I did the intros. I did, basically shifting more from one another. But just to shout out, Kasabian is the talented guy behind the logo and the guy behind the episode overlays and so on. So shout out to him.
I will just add, because Shinogi, well, he's awesome, and so is
Indeed.
Kasabian. But yes, so thank you so very much.
Okay.
Now let me drill you. I've got questions for you, Miz. Because one of the things that you and I were talking about...
Let's see what happens here.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can indeed hear you.
Good. One of the things that you and I were discussing afterwards was the fact that they are bringing back the controller classes. They are bringing back CC and a utility. Now, this is something that in most games is homogenized into another class or multiple classes, as we had discussed. However, there needs to be meaningful CC in a game. How do you, in your opinion, because I'm curious on this, make meaningful CC?
Okay, so let's preface this with, as you've just said, this is my opinion. This is not some incredible inside track of knowledge or notes I have in front of me. This is pure speculation. So let's not have any of this, please, put back out as fact, because it isn't. This is Mizpah's ramblings. If I look at the comments that were made about DPS, DPS is king. The tank wants to do more DPS, and that's great. That's fine. But DPS is a choice. It's a role in its own right. It has its own strengths and its own weaknesses. And whereas being a tank is important, being a healer is important, and being a DPS is important, there is a little bit of a trend to say I want to be some other class plus DPS. Now, in order for that to happen in a game, and for it to be reasonably balanced, the plus element has to be balanced in its own right. So I can see a scenario whereby if I want to be a crowd controller, and that's going to be meaningful, then I need to be able to make selections and choices to do with my class, my spells, my abilities, my whatever they might be, to say, okay, I'm going to concentrate on this stuff. But if I do this, then I should be losing capabilities elsewhere. I like the idea of excuse the phraseology, the balls-to-the-wall DPS that can do 20% more DPS than anyone or anything else. But it can't crowd control for toffee. If you sneeze at it, it dies.
I don't think
and
toffee's
it's really
a good
got
choice.
no utility at all.
I don't think toffee's a good choice there for CC, because when you think of toffee, it's sticky. So if you're actually going to say stick somebody, slow somebody, I don't know, control them, toffee is probably a good thing to use.
It's probably
Just
not
throwing it
that
out there.
effective compared to all the chain snares and everything else that are in the offing. But here's the point on that one. For CC to be viable, you need to be very good at it. It needs to be an arena whereby player skill comes heavily into the equation, knowing exactly what you can pull out of your bag of tricks where and when, but sacrificing DPS in order to do so and to do so effectively. Therefore, you have a DPSer that can't do that, but can do more DPS. And I don't have a problem with there being a DPS role that does way more DPS than others, or a spectrum of roles that do, 20, 30%, whatever the numbers have to be, given that the utility that's added to utility classes, not just CC, hopefully there'll be buffers, there'll be debuffers, there may even be new things coming in from left field that we aren't considering. For utility, let's try English, to be really viable, and for it to be really something that is a standout feature of a playstyle, it needs to be meaningful. For it to be meaningful, it can't just be DPS plus.
Well, let me throw this out there. We have Olton Stuff, who has just said, I like the Holy Trinity thing. I don't know why people have an issue with it. I think it's a matter of design style more so than anything else. I mean, I remember when I really started getting into MMOs, the Holy Trinity was the Holy Trinity. It is King, it is Lord, it is God. It is everything that makes an MMO an MMO. And if you don't have it, people don't like it. However, I have to state, my more enjoyable experiences came from games that had controllers. I mean, playing City of Villains as an example, there was a class that did nothing but control. Well, they could do a little bit of damage here and there, but control was a big part of it. When you start to throw in multiple roles, or roles is the word to use. When you start throwing multiple roles, it needs to be balanced in a really positive way. Too much focus and design, I think, has been put to making the people who use the DPS meters have their EPs happy. I don't think that's fair. I think that by doing that, you've actually negated the roles of other people. And by throwing in a controller class and actually putting the emphasis on control, I kind of like that. Whether that control is slow or putting a buff up that makes the tank run faster. I mean, going back to City of Villains, not being able to put that fast buff on, people were screaming turtle because they were going too slow through dungeons. So the reality is, there needs to be utility. Utility needs to be handled correctly. I'd like to see a game where the quadrility, to quote Brad, what a great phrase, the quadrility actually gets implemented well, where the quality is on, is my group doing well? Now, a lot of MMOs focus on having small groups, like 5-mans for dungeons and stuff. That's not a viable option if you want to throw in a quadrility, because at that point in time, what you're actually looking at is 1 DPS, 1 healer, 1 controller, 1 tank. So I think for some people, we were talking about this. A couple of times, Brad did mention, along with Salim, 6-party groups. So maybe, just maybe, 6 is the number we're looking at. Might be more, might be less. But to actually do a quadrinity, I think you really need to have more than 5.
Indeed, and Ninja from the chat channel, I can't read the rest of the names, it's in that fantastic green that means
The Ninjaneer.
Here at the screen.
Sorry,
the Ninjaneer, thank you.
Ninjaneer.
Oh, Ninjaneer.
Ninjaneer. Sup,
Well, I'll skip trying to pronounce the name and move on to the point. Encounter design becomes key. I'd love to see mobs or groups or packs where, this stuff was critical. Go back to Vanilla WoW. I know people like to bash it, but there were zones, times, and places where if you couldn't sheep something, and you were pushing, the envelope of the content you could do, you were going to have a problem. Simple example. But I'd like to go back to a scenario where a balanced group has to be made up of, you need your tank, you need your healer. Maybe you do need your balls to the wall DPS just to get the numbers. But then there should be room for either some pure control or some pure, some hybrids that are, I'm all about buff or debuff, I'm all about this or that.
Yeah.
And if this stuff, in my personal view, is designed well, a group of 1 tank, 1 healer, and 4 pure DPS will be less effective and less efficient than a group that makes use of the full spectrum of abilities that are present in the game.
Agree.
Do people agree or disagree, or am I just slightly crazy?
Well, I think you're crazy, and I agree with you. So I'm pretty certain the rest of the channel could feel the same way. I will state, though, that Brad just said it's a working number. It's too early to commit. And that's the thing.
Okay.
A lot of people, you need to realize and remember, this isn't a Kickstarter phase. They are starting to pull things together. They have a really good idea of what they want to do. They have talked about in many of their Q&As the fact that they have their design plan and everything. But one of the things that you can get involved in is helping. They are paying attention to what you say. They are listening to what you have to say. And, there was, a comment of, in one of the Q&As, death may have some meaningful stuff. And then Q&A update, death will be very meaningful. They're listening to the things you have to say. As Mizpah said in the interview, this is your chance to get back the game that you miss. If you are one of those people who is sitting there going, where's the challenge? If you are sitting there going, why? Why can't I have those experiences where, holy cow, if I die, it actually means something? Other than, I'm just going to run back, res runs, whatever. If you're looking for that, this is a Kickstarter to get involved in. Put your money where your mouth is.
As a committee, I think the next thing to do is to bounce to the channel and just take, random questions. But I'm going to get back on that soapbox we mentioned briefly earlier for a minute. As a community, we're saying we want this game. I've been doing guild stuff and other stuff for years, many conversations with people who tell me, hey, I want this in a game. And I've done that myself. But if we're going to say we want something, there comes a point you've actually got to make it happen. And here we're being given an opportunity. So, I've done something a little unusual and gone, hey, Kickstarter, I'm going to back it. Candidly, I normally don't, because if I try and back every single game I want to talk about, write about, report on, or look at, I'd be eating ramen, and that would
You wouldn't be eating ramen, you'd be living with me again.
But that could just be so misconstrued, but we'll move quickly on from that particular point. This game has got me excited. This game has got me wanting to play it. That's why I'm sitting here banging this drum saying, hey, let's make this happen. There are lots of great advances in technology. There are advances in development processes and cycles. There is more capability in hardware and graphic engines. There's more capability at the back end available these days. Let's take these great MMO concepts. Let's get them working in a current, up-to-date MMO without going into the let's allow everyone to do everything mindset that a number of games have. Not all, and indeed some games that have had that mindset in spades seem to be improving. And there is a cyclical nature of development, and I think we're in the point where we have a shot at seeing a fantastic MMO that could be a home for many years come to life. But it isn't going to do so by itself.
No.
So, this is not a sales channel. I'm going to bang this drum once, and then I'm going to go a little quieter.
Wait a second.
Get out there. Back the Kickstarter, because I want to play this damn game.
Right. Well,
that note,
I'm going to jump in from the channel, and we have Ulstenstolf again, along with Virali and a lot of other people stating that immersion is what they're after, and they want to have that experience. I have to state, it's interesting to hear from Brad and from Salim talk about horizontal content, not vertical content. Well, it's really hard to see my hands. So this is interesting to me because the reality is you can only get immersed in a game if you don't have to feel like you have to rush to the end. I mean, I am one of those people who likes the story. If I am playing a game and I am not getting a good story, I'm not going to stick with it for very long. That's just how I am. I don't necessarily need to rush to end game, if you want to use end game quotes. My true joy in a game comes from joining a party with a whole bunch of people, especially people I know. I like getting to know people I don't know too, but I like getting together with people I know and taking on challenges. Like they were talking about, that experience of, holy cow, we took the boss down, or we took that mob down who showed up out of nowhere, and I have 4 health left, but we did it. I miss those moments. I miss, to quote, those nerdgasms. I want them back.
So, you mentioned immersion. Well, let's try, and this is very much ad hoc. Okay, what creates immersion?
What
We've
from
seen
you
stuff in
isn't
various
ad
games.
hoc?
We've seen stuff in various games, so let me just bounce a load of ideas around. Some I've seen in PJ forums, some are my own, some are from elsewhere. Okay, we need a living, vibrant world.
Agreed.
We need something that seems as if it actually spans end to end. I love the concept of climates and transitions between climates. Hey, I'm in the Sahara. I walked through a tunnel. Oh dear, I now need Arctic-grade underwear because I'm in 4 foot of ice.
Well, that's why I love this
That's not very
concept of
realistic
planar.
to me.
This sounds so exciting with that. I'm just going to keep interrupting you.
Absolutely.
Just, you know.
I'm used to it. We need the scenario whereby the lore in the world is out in the world. That used to happen. You could go and explore and find out things all of the time. You had areas that just were inherently dangerous. Respect the environment. That adds something to the equation as well.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the times where going somewhere at night was critically more dangerous than wandering around in the very pleasant day.
Yeah.
It's a great concept. I loved elements in things like early Vanguard, whereby just you went into a very safe zone, but every so often something came through that made it not very safe. Again, it goes back to respect the environment. And all of those things can take your character on that journey where you progress from a start point to an end point. And whereas I am very, very focused on, for me, for raiding and for guild stuff, and that's another topic for another day, if you can get someone engrossed, make them buy into their character, make them invest in that journey because all of the time their experiences are meaningful to their character, then there's absolutely no reason why you can't have the competitive endgame, but still have this fantastic horizontal sort of progression and growth as you explore the game, as you become more and more viable through spells and picking things up and becoming better at something, rather than just, hey, I've run to the end because there was nothing much to see here, I'm now level 99 and I can cast a fireball that crits for 6,317. Fantastic. The end game will be what it will be. The game will be what it will be, but the concepts being put into play here, well, I like them, and from what I can see in the channel, others do as well. But Pseudo, let's pick some stuff out of the channel, because I'm sure me rambling is not that interesting.
I'm just letting you soapbox. It's been a while since I've heard you soapboxing, so I'm letting you soapbox. But yes, first off, hello, Gazimoth. Just want to say hello to you. For those of you who are unaware, Gazimoth is one of our other hosts. He joins us on our Friday shows called The Cosmotronic, which is about a different MMO called Wildstar. But back onto Pantheon. One of the things that is very common, or at least I should say is being discussed quite frequently right now, is voice acting in MMOs, or the addition of voice acting. Now, I'm kind of one of those individuals who wants the concepts and the story. I don't need the story told to me. It could be a nice addition if I feel like being really, really lazy, but I love story. If a game is going to tell me a story, make certain that the questing can do it on its own, or the random spawns that occur. You know, if a piece of loot drops off a boss, put some really lovely flavor text on it so that I'm interested in it beyond just simply it's a big shiny sword. But that's, that's a personal point.
I think there's
However,
balance there as well.
I'm
going to cut across you now. I'm going to take it in turns.
That's fine. Go for it. But I agree. There does need to be balance. However, I will point out, and these are many fingers crossed. Notice this? Many fingers crossed, folks. If this gets kickstarted and we all get this thing moving, what I would rather them spend the money on is the design of the world, the design of the stories, and the design of all of the mechanics. That's a personal thing. Now, hey, if the rest of the community, and maybe Brad, if you're listening, which I know you are, if the rest of the community wants to get in and help with the voice acting, hey, we could save you a whole bunch of money. That might be part of the Kickstarter thing. Throw in a tier where people could add in like a line that you have them read or something like that. I don't know, just a suggestion. That would be cool, a community developed voice acting, so you don't have to pay for the high class actors.
I think there are reasons why the high-class voice talent is referred to as high-class voice talent. I certainly don't claim to be able to hold that candle. And I'm not sure how well that would work if we truly had a crowdsourced set of voice actors for the game.
Well,
However,
I'll tell you what.
Just picking up on the lore point from a moment ago, they have said they will occasionally use instancing, and primarily, or maybe not primarily, but one of the purposes of search is to actually create a device for telling the story. There are times where the world itself can and should tell the story. Indeed, through flavor text, through exploration, through books, through conversations, through your character learning. But there are times that, people won't necessarily always dig into all of that. It's a playstyle choice. And there are going to be occasions where something is so seminal to plots, to world events, to things that are happening, that you do need that slightly more, maybe not spoon-fed, but the environment created where there is no chance of missing this major piece of information.
I have to kind of disagree with you. The only reason why I say that is because I remember story, content, and lore from a game that had absolutely no voice acting whatsoever, because the combat and the development and the group play and the way they presented the different worlds was so impactful. I think that's possibly why I am so attracted to Pantheon. I mean, the concept of these planar worlds crashing into each other can present the type of thing where you, Miz, in your wonderful world of getting lost because you really have no clue which direction you're going.
I've got a map. I made it myself.
No, you don't. It ain't gonna work. You'll be on the same part of your map going, why am I seeing this? But besides that point, one moment you could be in this desert, arid climate and you're finding yourself dragging yourself along with your group, and then you just sort of find yourself melding into this world of ice, and the next thing you know, your characters might be skidding across the ice as you're trying to avoid that ice giant Bartholomew who showed up and wants to eat you because his world just smashed in and he happens to be a dislocated god, and boy is he not happy about it. I mean, that kind of stuff is going to be intriguing. But again, as I was saying before, this is in its kickstarting phase. This is not like we're turning around talking to them in a fully polished game that's about to release next month.
Yep.
So,
and I love the comment made on Muds, by the way, that's just emerged in the chat. Voice is great at times, but if the story and the background isn't great, and there's no reason to think it won't be at this stage, then, voice is not enough. It's just one arrow in the quiver of building the world and telling the story.
Agreed. But also don't make huge lines and blocks of quest text, because that can also get really, really, really annoying. But yes. Now, should we cover a little bit of news before we close? Or
let's
is
just
this
do
one
a
of
little
those...
bit of news. No, let's just do some very quick headlines, please. Pseudo, we'll look for any other great questions in the chat while we're doing that. Mm-hmm. And then I need to go and get some food.
You not eat on a Monday night? Go figure. Yes, I'll hit up some news. You go ahead and collect some questions from the chat so that I can at least get the news out. Pay attention. But yes, a couple of things. It is very, very much so a Kickstarter haven for today. I mean, we've got Pantheon Rise of the Fallen on Kickstarter, and then there's also another Kickstarter, which we'll be discussing at another time, but just a brief heads up, of an MMO RTS that has actually been funded. And if I can actually pronounce the name right, I will be very happy. Knowing me, I will get it wrong, but it's Novus Eterno, and this is something that we will be looking at another time. And then the big news, which I found rather interesting, for those who are frequent flyers of our shows, you know that I am an open source lover, and it seems that Valve has decided that one of the coolest things that they could do to the Debian developer community is give them free Steam games for life. Did you hear about this? This is crazy.
Honest, no.
This is crazy. Apparently, on Thursday, the Debian mailing list was given a message with an offer for all the Debian developers to actually, who are registered contributors, might I add, get their hands on Valve game titles, past, present, and future, forever, for free. That to me is just exceptional. I mean, helping out those poor sons who have to work on. I actually know somebody who works on the Debian kernel, and my hat goes off to them. The amount of work that gets done, and it's pretty much free. They're not exactly paid for the work they do, so my support goes off to them. Now, the last bits of news before I let you open your mouth again. Don't worry, I'm watching you. I see what you're trying to do. But the last bit of news is just a small recap of things that are coming up on MMO Buff. So, as you know, this is our Monday night show. We do a lot of analytical discussions here. We dig deep. We try to make certain that we go beyond just simply, ooh, this is shiny and pretty. That's not the kind of stuff that interests us. We like to ask questions that, for example, like Brad says, ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, that's how we like to roll. So on Mondays, that's what we discuss. Tuesdays, it's all about community in my show called The Campfire. I have The Real Blank Space as a host, along with Screenager from Afterlife Gaming. And we have a guest tomorrow from VOTF, and we're going to be discussing communities, guilds, strengthening them, how to empower them, and in particular, websites. And again, it's not your simple, typical show. You're definitely going to want to check it out. Wednesday, we get into online TCGs and all things like that with Marshmallow, who happens to be a champion at Magic the Gathering. And we're looking at all kinds of crazy online TCGs. So I'm on that one then, too. I'm apparently on all the shows, doing all the things. And then Friday, we have Kai Dream, Gazimov, Mizpah, and myself, along with some Chuas, some Lops, and some Chompacabras, as we discuss Wildstar. Now, I'm going to throw out to you, just as a possibility, we get this thing kickstarted, which everyone will be hopefully participating in. I can pretty much guarantee you there will be a show completely and utterly dedicated to Pantheon.
Very strange how there's a spare night on a Thursday. Whatever might be happening there.
I give away nothing. Nothing. Now, if you have any questions, comments, things you want us to get in touch with, things that you want us to discuss, if you have things and you want to get in touch with, anybody really within our teams or people who we have spoken to, because we can always pass questions on, go to MMOBuff.TV and in the upper right, click contact and just send messages. I am a hawk. I watch all the things because I'm all about the community. So there you go. Now I will let you actually say something, Mizpah. And apparently you need to say cheese doodles.
I need to say a whaty? Cheese noodles.
Cheese doodles.
I'm sure that will... Cheese doodles.
Cheese doodles.
Okay. I know many types of cheese, but a cheese doodle is not something I've yet run into. Is it someone with a frantic desire to sketch and a desire for cheesy comestibles?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that works. We had a couple of good questions there I want to pick out quickly, and then I think it's time to call things a wrap. Okay, name I can't pronounce, because this chat's scrolling too fast to let me.
I told you to keep track.
Because it rolled off
screen. Do I need to take
screen.
that job back from you again because you can't do it?
Okay, Demo Gothic says, at Mizpah with the Holy Trinity in pivotal roles. My screen won't stop scrolling. There must be an easier way of doing this. Copy, paste, notes. There we go. I shall paste the long question so it stops scrolling and I can now read it.
Wow.
The Holy Trinity and pivotal roles. What will happen to characters whose role is already filled in the group? Will a tank be viable in a group that already has a tank stroke healer stroke CC? Well, I'm purely guessing. We don't know to what degree people will be able to have more than one role. I would hope if there are personally more than one role out there, then there's some form of meaningful cost or investment to change roles. I don't necessarily like personally the idea of me being a this 1 minute and a that the next minute, because that also really degrades that role separation and the importance of choice. But it does make sense that people should always be able to get involved and play with friends. I guess the question is, as a community, to what degree are we happy, and or to what degree is Brad's vision for the game to say, at the top end of the game, whatever that might be defined as, you need to be selective and make smart choices and be balanced. I'm okay with that as a principle, but we don't know. Am I in the minority or majority?
Well, see, that's the thing. I mean, if you're talking about having, let's say, multiple healers in a group, so to speak, maybe it'll be possible to have multiple healers in a group, because with you lacking that one extra tank or that one extra DPS or that one extra controller, you need the extra healer. Or maybe because of the fact that you have decided to walk in with two tanks, that one extra tank, lighten the load maybe for a healer or the controller or the DPS. I mean, it's a matter of the encounter design and the actual mechanic and role design. Now, these are things that are still being fleshed out. These are things that are still being developed. But again, what do we want to see? And let's make certain that Brad's aware of it. That's my opinion on that one.
And indeed, we don't yet know the encounter design principles. Be this a group of 4, be this a group of 6, be this a group of 5. We do not know.
No.
8, 70, 76 and a half, Ling.
Can I be the half?
However, it could well be there are occasions where, balances in terms of I need 2 tanks or I need more or less of healers. Things we're not so used to at the moment could just be the way to go. We don't yet know.
Yeah.
Someone mentions off-tanks, and I loved the raiding days where off-tanks were frankly critical many times. Having one tank wander in with the odd transition, it's not so much magic there.
I just want to throw out there, for those who have not had a chance to see the interview that I did with Enki from Death and Taxes, watch it. We do not believe in calling people off tanks. If you're a tank, you're a tank. Actually, you're human, is basically the decision we came down. Off tanks just seems to be off-putting. You're a tank. If you tank, you're a tank. Makes a difference whether you're tanking 90 mobs or 4.
Yep, and Aradune's come up with something that I really should have mentioned as well. We do know there's spells out there, there's pre-planning, there's build-outs to whatever degree they happen to be. If you know what you're going to be doing as a group, then you should be setting up. And ideally, you'll all go to a city. You will meet up in this city. You will decide your roles in the group. You will get this synergy and head off together. They've talked about this temporary group buff. Wouldn't it be great if that group buff was called something like, I don't know, well-traveled? And the only way to get this buff is to start in a major hub and move as a group through the world. Maybe that meets multiple goals at the same time. But if pre-planning comes into this so much, that should be very possible.
I also think, I like the concept that you have there, Miss, but I also like the concept of, hey, I happen to be a controller and I need a particular spell and it only comes from heroes that are attuned to me because I'm this particular type of hero. Can you guys run around the world with me as we go look for this thing? Because that to me sounds like a lot of fun. I also like the concept of helping others find. Now, this was said by Salim and Brad. If this is not in-game, I am going to cry. So just know that you might make me cry. I like the concept of actually being able to go after heroes that are named after the developers so that we can turn into them. Because there was an Aradune hero that he was talking about that, you can pick up the essences of and then turn into him. I want to turn into Salim. So can we make that happen? I want the Atari t-shirt. It doesn't necessarily have to be an Atari t-shirt, but I want the t-shirt. Just as Salim's t-shirt. That would be great.
Yeah. I like Korlag's comment here regarding, a group, an exploration, some catacombs somewhere and, doing this difficult stuff to get the rare crafting ingredients. I'd love to see crafting pulled heavily into the adventuring sphere, so to speak, to coin a Vanguardian term.
Rest in peace. But yes.
Looking for anything else I want to pull out of the chat. But I think we're probably getting to the end of bits and pieces. For anyone not following chat, Aradune is talking about things becoming dynamic with who is in your group and raid. Changes depending on where you are and what you're coming up against. I believe he also a moment ago said, well, why can't we have different group sizes as we work our way through content? And that's something that could be a lot of fun. Get people used to coordinating and perhaps in an ever larger group as time goes on.
Absolutely.
Fennell doesn't like the multi-talent characters. And Pseudo, it seems that your wish has just been granted.
Yes! Oh, that just makes me so excited. Just think about it. Considering the fact that this is a targeted game, considering the fact that they're looking at building the community to be as strong as they are, and we have heard Brad talk about being able to go in and play the game with others. This is the game that these guys want to play. Do you honestly think that you're going to run around and potentially not run into a developer, but I think it would be really awesome to actually just say maybe kill a developer in game if we can. Make yourselves raid bosses. Make yourselves raid bosses or world boss. There's a GM event. Come kill Salim and Aradun. There you go. World events starting.
And just to round off Aradun, they're saying that the encounter or region should define the group size and composition. In other words, encounters are designed with certain things in mind, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But I think, what am I drinking? Cognac. It's very late for me. I think it's time to probably cap things off.
It is. Now, this is not a normal 2-hour shows. It's not normally how we do things. So usually we're only about an hour long. But the content for tonight was just too rich for us to not extend the show. And again, a very big thank you to the community who's gotten involved. And a huge thank you to Ben, who went a little bit unmentioned. But thank you to Ben. Thank you to Brad.
And slaving away behind the scenes, making things happen. So, Brad, Salim, Ben, thank you very, very much to everyone that's been in and watched. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you.
We are MMO Buff. You can find us all over the place. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Twitch. You can find us on MMOBuff.TV. Please do, because as long as we have people watching, we'll keep doing stuff like this. It has been a pleasure, and it has been a delight. So, time to say the goodbyes. Pseudo.
Oh, I get to do it. Yes. Because you didn't mention it, I'm actually going to do it. So, yes, this is Pseudo saying Toodle Pip.
And for MMO Buff, as always, thank you, everyone. This is Mizpah, signing off.